And this awakening is both in practical and in spiritual terms. In practical terms, the awakening of a society means a society that works for all, a world that works for all. In spiritual terms, Sarvodaya is an organization that's based on Buddhist and Gandhian principles. So the awakening is the awakening of your inner being that will cause you to want to live a spiritual life, that would cause you to want to live a life of compassion, to live a life of service, to not live a life that's based on greed and sensory overload and other things like that. And so for 5 decades now, Sarvodaya has been on the forefront of the kind of awakening development that's very, very different from typical Western development. In Western development, we're going to bring your society up materially so that it can be self-sufficient, so that you can buy our stuff. Okay, that's the definition of development. But development in the Sarvodian sense is the awakening of a society so that the 10 basic needs in a society are met, and are met in such a way that your heart is open, so that you're not just working a job, you're practicing right livelihood. You're not just kind of walking around blind. What you're doing is practicing a sense of self-awareness and mindfulness as you are moving along. And so these are all things that would happen in an awakened and aware community, an awakened and aware society. Now, obviously, this is not what's happening in Sri Lanka right now. This is not the dominant thought process or thought form in Sri Lanka. There's been a civil/ethnic war that's been going on for over 25 years now. And that war, which is ostensibly between the government of Sri Lanka and the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam, better known in the West as the Tamil Tigers, or on an ethnic level, a war between the Sinhalese Buddhists and the Tamil Hindus. But what the war is really about is the disruption of a society that's been disrupted by 3 layers of colonialism and a world in which people don't fit. We've created a world where I didn't fit inside my own community in Camden, New Jersey, and a Sinhalese or a Tamil or a Muslim in Sri Lanka doesn't fit on their own island. So the work that we've been doing is not traditional conflict resolution. What we're looking at doing is, how do you change the basic structure of a society from a world that works for a handful of elites and doesn't work for anybody else, to a world that works for all beings? Our ability to do that, our ability to make that change in the world, to create that change in the world, I think is the mark of our time. And I believe that Sarvodaya is one of those organizations that's right at the vanguard of that time, of that concept. And because of that, because Sarvodaya is not only an organization, it's a movement. It's not only a movement, but it's a philosophy. Because it's got all 3 of these things together, I get really attracted to working with Sarvodaya over there. And I get attracted to trying to replicate that kind of energy over here with my organization, Common Way Institute. Common Way has a similar philosophy, but Common Way is working in a very different consciousness framework. Yes, there are poor people still in America, but our focus isn't poor people. Our focus is a different kind of poverty. In Sri Lanka, there may be an experience of a poverty around things. They don't have, and there are people who don't have enough food, people who don't have enough water, people who don't have enough. In this society, in American society, we are over-glutted in stuff. We've got more than enough stuff. What we lack and what we are hungry and starving for is community, is connection, is a sense of belongingness, a sense of beingness, a sense of vision, and a sense that our work is part of a larger human and a larger spiritual tapestry. I think that we don't have that in this society. I think that we deeply need that in this society. I think that our ability to see the vision, see a vision of a society that actually works for all, and then work toward that society is the highest calling that we can achieve. And so there are people in Sri Lanka right now that are actually working toward that, which I find really exciting. And there are people here in this society that are working toward that in our own way, and I think that that is also really exciting. I think that pulling these things together, all these different threads and weaving them together, I think is going to create a whole new way of looking at human beings, a whole new way of being human on this planet. I believe that that's what all of our wisdom teachers were pointing toward. I think that's what the Buddha was pointing toward. I think that's what Jesus was pointing toward. I think that's what Muhammad and Lao Tzu and everybody else was pointing toward. To the extent that we honor that, we honor their memory, and we can call ourselves Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, whatever we want to call ourselves. To the extent that we dishonor it, it doesn't matter whether we're reading the Bible and ignore it or reading the Quran and ignore it. It doesn't matter which book you choose to ignore, okay? What matters is how you choose to honor the wisdom teaching itself. And that becomes the challenge. In some way, what I think we have to do is speak, but not be particularly concerned about where and when and how it's being heard. It might be heard 100 years from now. It might be heard next week. It might be heard by someone I've had no connection with at all. It may be heard by someone I've had a lot of contact with. And this is another example. I was doing a workshop with a group of people, and some of the people in the workshop were new, and some of the people I've been workshopping with for 3 or 4 years. They had done a lot of work with me. So we're on a first name basis. And as I got to a certain point in the workshop, this person who had been with me for 3 or 4 years said, "I got it. This means that I can't live my life as an American anymore, like the typical American." And I had 2 reactions to that. My first reaction was, I said that 3 years ago. Where were you? Why weren't you listening? But the second reaction was, that is exactly when they were ready to hear it. Okay? And it took, kind of this layering effect to get to the point of the breakthrough, of what Malcolm Gladwell calls the tipping point, of saying, I'm ready now to hear this, to get this.